Why do you think in economics that when people make arguments against capitalism, just when they make purely economic arguments, they always talk about monopolies? Like, why is everyone so obsessed with there's going to be monopolies? And so you hear that all the time.
I mean, why? It's because that's what they're taught, and that's what they, that's what everybody else says is the problem with capitalism, and it's repeated over and over and over again. So it's not like they're inventing this new objection. They're just repeating an existing objection. And it's in the water in America in particular, right? I mean, we have this obsession of fearing bigness. Now, it used to be also focused on big government, but we got over big government. Now we only focus on obsession with big corporations, big business. But it started in the 19th century with the muckrakers and with the opposition to the so-called monopolies at the time. It's not an accident. The first law passed that really violated separation of state from economics were antitrust laws. I mean, there'd be some laws pre that regulated railroads, but generally this is the first law that had sweeping powers over the economy. And it is true that in capitalism, particularly early on, some companies become very, very big. And the confusion was created between the bigness and between the ability of the government to grant monopolies, which is where the word monopoly comes from. Granting, the South Sea Corporation in England was granted a monopoly for all trade between India and Asia and the UK. That was a monopoly granted by the king. It was something the king had to give you. And then there was a conflation of size with the granting of monopoly power by government, because that was the experience coming out of England of the 19th century. But it's kind of become part of the culture in the US to resent bigness, to resent big companies, and to question and to question size, and to resent to resent big business. And it's captured in this idea of monopoly. Plus, in economics class, economics 101, they spend a huge amount of time talking about monopolies. In a way, the monopolies doesn't exist even when you have very large businesses. They create this whole detached from reality vision of perfect competition, Garden of Eden economics, and then monopolies as these evil entities. And then they do all this price theory, which has nothing to do with reality, nothing. And they educate kids year after year after year with this false economics. And that's what the kids retain, because it's heavily emphasized. And a lot of kids take Econ 101. It's in high schools, it's in freshman year colleges, even if you're not an economics student. So I always tell students, that's the section in the econ book that you should rip out the pages and throw them out, because they're useless. They're worse than useless. They do harm. The whole section on perfect competition and monopoly should be trashed completely.
And it's ironic too, these students being taught Marxism should also be taught that all of the major
that isn't
socialism.
Even Marxism, right? Because that's not even Marxism.
I know,
because it's classical economics, and it's complete perversion of the field by these mathematics-oriented, rationalistic, detached from reality economists of the early 20th century.
But it is ironic that the socialisms of the early 20th century all were about monopolizing all businesses and unions.
Because they rejected classical economics in favor of socialism. Socialism is not classical economics.
And to begin with, I wonder if I can ask you to capsulize. I know this is difficult. Can I ask you to capsulize your philosophy? What is Randism?
First of all, I do not call it Randism, and I don't like that name. I call it objectivism.
All right.
Meaning a philosophy based on objective reality. Now let me explain it as briefly as I can. First, my philosophy is based on the concept that reality exists as an objective absolute, that man's mind, reason, is his means of perceiving it, and that man needs a rational morality. I am primarily the creator of a new code of morality which has so far been believed impossible, namely a morality not based on faith.
On faith.
Not on faith, not on arbitrary whim, not on emotion, not on arbitrary edict, mystical or social, but on reason, a morality which can be proved by means of logic, which can be demonstrated to be true and necessary.
All right. All right.
Now, may I define what my morality is?
All right.
Because this is merely an introduction. My morality is based on man's life as a standard of value. And since man's mind is his basic means of survival, I hold that if man wants to live on earth and to live as a human being, he has to hold reason as an absolute, by which I mean that he has to hold reason as his only guide to action, and that he must live by the independent judgment of his own mind, that his highest moral purpose is the achievement of his own happiness, and that he must not force other people nor accept their right to force him, that each man must live as an end in himself and follow his own rational self-interest.
May I?
All right, before we go on, reminder, please like the show. We've got 163 live listeners right now, 30 likes. That should be at least 100. I figure at least 100 of you actually like the show. Maybe there are like 60 of the Matthews out there who hate it, but at least the people who are liking it, you know, I want to see a thumbs up. There you go. Start liking it. I want to see that go to 100. All it takes is a click of a thing. Whether you're looking at this, and you know, the likes matter. It's not an issue of my ego. It's an issue of the algorithm. The more you like something, the more the algorithm likes it. So, you know, and if you don't like the show, give it a thumbs down. Let's see your actual views being reflected in the likes. But if you like it, don't just sit there. Help get the show promoted. Of course, you should also share, and you can support the show at JeronBrookShow.com/support, or on Patreon or Subscribestar or Locals. And show your support for the work, for the value hopefully you're receiving from this. And of course, don't forget, if you're not a subscriber, even if you just come here to troll, or even if you're here like Matthew to defend Marx, then you should subscribe, because that way you'll know when to show up. You'll know what shows are on, when they're on. You'll get notified, right? So, yes, like, share, subscribe, support. Like, share, subscribe, support. There you go. Easy. Do one or all of those, please.